Well, thank you, Michael. I knew Michael was going to be emceeing tonight, and so I started with Pamela Anderson because she got fired off a show before Baywatch because she was more attractive than the rest of the cast. So I decided to take a preemptive strike against Michael. I couldn't get him fired, so I thought I'd use a cheap producer trick and have Pamela Anderson on there. This is me in 1980, and please don't anybody do the math. I worked for an environmental law group, and the two big issues we worked on were Site C and Trans Mountain Pipeline. So you can see why I moved to entertainment law. This is a film that I produced in the 80s before I became a producer on environmental pollution, and I realized at that point that I was a terrible actor and I never did that again. However, small things in your life are the things I think that influence you. And my aunt gave me this book about the filming of Room with a View, and I realized at that point that this was a job that you could do. I didn't know up to that point you could actually have that much fun and still work. And this is how I transitioned into environmental law, or in entertainment law. A friend of mine, Richard Davis, and I were at a party together, and he said, "Do you want to be an entertainment lawyer?" Unlike Joel, this was my path. And this is how I became an entertainment lawyer. Richard taught me everything I knew. So the first script that I got was called The Smoking Man, about the Marlboro Man, from Scott Kennedy, and he sent me the script. I wrote 5 pages of notes, and he wrote back to me and said, "Stick to lawyering." So after that, I didn't give comments to any clients on the scripts that they presented to me. Now, this is the first film that Tina and I did together, Love on the Side, and I learned about producing at that point. We had a co-producer that was very drunk on set and insulted all of the cast. And the person who financed this film from Liberty Films reneged on their $500,000 deal, and we had to find money for the project from some other sources. So that's what I found was how you did producing. And this is Vic Sarin, who we've done a number of films with. This is in India, which was our first film, Partition. And as you can see, there were thousands of people in the audience there. And we created a set for the same cost, a complete set with people in it for the same cost as the half house we built in Langley. And the extras were ripped off by the extras casting person, and they had to pull their knives to stop us from using this casting agent. This is the star of our next film, The Seal, that is, and he was created by Neil Scanlon, who did Babe, and he did an amazing job in creating what a seal does. And this is the next film that we did called Replicas, and we had to create this scene from scratch because we weren't able to sell our film. It started with a hospital scene, and we did this for about $50. We had our editor walk out and shoot a cast member, and we were able to sell the film after that. This is a film we did in Argentina called The Games Maker, and it was this image that we loved and that made us decide to make this film. And as you can see, the imagination that was involved with our Argentine partners were great. This is Ed Asner, and we convinced our partners to have him in the film that we did in Argentina. And he wasn't able to remember his lines, so we figured out that we could use cue cards that he could do as a cast member and 2 bowls of spaghetti, and he was amazing in the job that he did. This is a documentary we did called The Boy from Gaeta. We showed it at the UN, and what we learned there was an amazing revelation. The Tanzanian government tried to prevent us from showing this film, and it was because of that controversy that we got a huge amount of publicity. This image I love. It was done by a Oscar-winning cinematographer for a film called Keepers of the Magic. And what he did there was use a light on a car, and it made it look like there was a train coming. He turned off all the other lights and created a beautiful image. This is a TV movie that we did called Tiny House of Terror. As you can imagine, that was for a Lifetime movie, but we still tried to keep the production value up, even if the content of the film wasn't that great. But we had an amazing cinematographer, and the film looked great. This is how I felt when we did the film called Anthem of a Teenage Prophet. It was a very difficult film to do, and the financier that we had went bankrupt on the first day of shooting, and we had to scramble to find money to put this film together. And I had the most fun I've ever had putting together the music for that film. This is a film we are going to be shooting in 700 miles from the North Pole. It's a Russian village that's been abandoned by the Russians, and we've done a horror script now that's going to back into this location. I put this up because this is a film, probably the film I love the most, and what I realized is that it's the unpredictability of producing and the unpredictability of films that I've seen that I love, and it is that which is the driving force for me to have moved into film. And this is my law partner, Carl Stahl. At his funeral this year, somebody asked from the audience what they said. They were angry and said that he was undisciplined and he could have been prime minister. And what I saw in the 20 years that I practiced law with him is that he replaced every single book that he had, every single law book, with an art book. And by the end of our practice, he had a complete collection of art books. And what that told me is that when you have a passion for something, it's those little things that you do every day that actually become what your passion is. Thank you.